I'm going to say something that might stop you mid-scroll. I'm 100 years old, and I never went to a nursing home. Not because I was lucky, not because I was rich, but because of a few quiet choices I made, most of them small, most of them unglamorous, starting much earlier than people think. If you're young, this might sound like a story about someday. If you're older, it might feel uncomfortably close. Either way, stay with me for a moment. This isn't a speech, it's just a life mine told honestly. My name doesn't really matter. What matters is that I've lived long enough to watch generations argue with each other. Young people asking questions, old people shaking their heads, both sides thinking the other just doesn't get it. This channel is called Young vs. Old, but the truth I've learned is this: we're not enemies. We're the same people, just at different timestamps. When I was 20, I didn't think about being 100. When I was 40, I avoided thinking about being 80. And when I was 70, I finally realized I had waited too long to ask the right questions. Young questions always sound like this: will this matter later? Am I wasting my time? Why do old people talk about health and habits so much? Old wisdom usually answers too late. Let me tell you something most people won't say out loud. The nursing home doesn't begin at 90. It begins decades earlier, in tiny daily decisions no one is paying attention to. I watched my friends disappear one by one, not die, disappear. First they stopped driving, then they stopped walking far, then they stopped deciding things for themselves. Eventually, someone else decided where they lived. I didn't want that, not because I was afraid of dying, but because I was afraid of not living. So I made a quiet rule for myself early on: never make my future self's life harder just because my present self wants comfort. That rule cost me things: convenience, pride, sometimes friendships. Here's a mistake I almost made, and one many people do. I thought independence came from money alone. Save enough, invest enough, and you're safe. That's what everyone says. But I've seen wealthy men lose their independence faster than broke ones, because independence isn't stored in a bank account. It's stored in your body, your mind, and your habits. I stayed out of a nursing home because I could still do things myself. Not impressive things, ordinary things. Getting up without help, remembering names, cooking a simple meal, walking outside every day, even when I didn't feel like it. These aren't heroic acts, they're maintenance. When you're young, maintenance feels optional. You think strength is permanent. You think your mind will always bounce back. You think tomorrow will forgive today's mistakes. It doesn't. It just charges interest. I've lived long enough to have real regret. Not dramatic regret, quiet regret. Regret for days I stayed seated when I should have moved. Regret for conversations I avoided because they were uncomfortable. Regret for assuming later was guaranteed. If I could sit across from my 25-year-old self, I wouldn't lecture him. I'd just say, your future body is listening. Be kind to it. One reason I avoided a nursing home is simple. I never fully handed my life over to someone else. I asked for help, but I didn't surrender responsibility. There's a difference. I saw people my age stop trying because someone younger took over for convenience. At first, it feels like care. Later, it feels like erasure. Young people often ask me, "What's the biggest lesson?" They expect something profound. Here's the honest answer: keep doing small, hard things, even when no one is watching. Walk when sitting is easier. Cook when ordering is faster. Think when scrolling is tempting. Old wisdom isn't mysterious. It's repetitive, and that's why it's ignored. I didn't avoid a nursing home because I was special. I avoided it because I treated aging like a skill, not a surprise. Every skill needs practice, and practice looks boring from the outside. If you're young and listening, I'm not asking you to fear aging. I'm asking you to respect it. If you're older and listening, it's not too late to reclaim more than you think. The line between independence and dependence is thinner than people realize, and it's crossed quietly. This is part one of my story. Not the end, just the beginning of the things I wish someone had told me sooner. If this made you stop and think, even for a moment, stay with me. When I say I treated aging like a skill, people usually smile politely. They think I'm exaggerating. They think skills are things you show off. But the most important skills in life are invisible until they're gone. In my 60s, something uncomfortable happened. My body stopped forgiving me as quickly. Miss a few walks, my knees told me. Skip stretching. My back remembered. Ignore sleep. My mind felt foggy for days. That's when I noticed a split happening around me. Some friends said, "Well, this is just how it is now." Others quietly adjusted their lives. One group aged fast. The other aged slower. I made a mistake in my younger years that I want to be honest about. I chased productivity like it was morality. If I wasn't useful, I felt guilty. That mindset almost ruined my later life, because when work ends, and it always does, you need something else holding you upright, not a job title, not applause. You need routines that don't depend on being needed. I watched men who were powerful their whole lives collapse emotionally after retirement, not because they were weak, because they never practiced being ordinary. They didn't know how to fill a quiet day, so the day swallowed them. Isolation doesn't always come from being alone. Sometimes it comes from not knowing how to be with yourself. One reason nursing homes fill up is loneliness disguised as care. Families mean well. Doctors mean well. But when someone stops engaging with life, it's easier to relocate them than to reawaken them. I refused to stop engaging, even when it embarrassed me, even when I was slow, even when younger people had to wait. Let me tell you something uncomfortable for young listeners. Your parents and grandparents aren't stubborn. They're scared of becoming invisible, scared of being talked around instead of talked to, scared that one day a decision will be made without them. And that's it. I stayed out of a nursing home because I kept making decisions, even small ones. What to eat, when to walk, who to call. Autonomy shrinks only if you let it. There's a quiet mistake people make as they age. They simplify their lives too much. At first it feels smart, less effort, fewer challenges. But the brain is like a muscle with opinions. It weakens when it's bored. I kept learning small things, not impressive things, new recipes, new routes, new names. Confusion, I learned, isn't the enemy. Avoiding confusion is. Regret has a strange sound when you live long enough. It's not loud. It doesn't shout. It whispers during ordinary moments. I should have moved more. I should have said that. I thought I had more time. Most mistakes aren't catastrophic. They're cumulative. That's why advice from old people sounds repetitive. We're trying to interrupt accumulation. I avoided a nursing home because I stayed physically inconvenient. I didn't let my world shrink to one chair and one screen. Every year, I asked myself one honest question. What am I slowly giving up without realizing it? Sometimes it was balance, sometimes curiosity, sometimes patience. I fought to reclaim those things early before they disappeared completely. Young questions often sound like, what's the point of doing this now? Here's old wisdom, stripped of romance. The point is not needing someone else to do it later. That's it. That's the lesson. I don't hate nursing homes. Some people need them. Some people thrive in them. But many people end up there not because of age, but because of neglect layered over decades. Neglect of movement, neglect of relationships, neglect of self-respect. Those things don't vanish overnight. They erode. If I sound emotional, it's because I've attended too many quiet goodbyes. People still breathing, still thinking, but no longer steering. I promised myself I'd stay a participant as long as I could, not a passenger. This isn't about being extreme. I didn't run marathons at 90. I didn't wake up at 5 a.m. to conquer the day. I just didn't quit myself. There's a difference. In the next part, I'll tell you the specific habits, the boring ones, the awkward ones that made the biggest difference. Not miracles, not hacks. Just choices that compound quietly. If you're listening, thank you for giving me your time. That alone tells me you're already doing better than you think. People always want the list, the habits, the secrets written neatly like instructions on a box. I understand that instinct. I had it too. So let me tell you what actually mattered, not what sounds impressive, but what worked when no one was watching. The first habit was movement, but not the kind you post about. No gym memberships I didn't use, no heroic routines. I walked every day, even badly. Some days it was 10 minutes. Some days it was slow enough that people passed me twice. But I showed my body that it was still needed. Your body doesn't care about intensity. It cares about consistency. The second habit was embarrassment tolerance. This one surprises people. I forced myself to do things I wasn't good at anymore, asking questions I should already know, admitting confusion, letting younger people explain things. Pride ages faster than the body. Once it calcifies, learning stops and decline accelerates. I stayed teachable. That alone kept my mind alive. The third habit was maintaining friction. I didn't automate everything away. I paid some bills manually. I cooked instead of ordering. I wrote things down instead of relying on reminders. Friction keeps you awake. Remove too much of it, and life turns into passive consumption. I watched friends become spectators to their own days. Another choice that mattered more than people expect. I kept relationships slightly inconvenient. I didn't replace visits with messages. I didn't cancel plans just because staying home was easier. Loneliness doesn't announce itself loudly. It settles in quietly when effort disappears. I reached out even when I felt boring, even when I felt old. Connection isn't about being interesting. It's about being present. Here's a mistake I avoided by accident, and I'm grateful for it. I never built my identity around being young at heart. That phrase can be dangerous. It makes aging feel like failure. I accepted my age without surrendering my agency. I was old and still responsible for myself. That mindset kept me grounded instead of bitter. If I had to boil all of this down into something useful, something you can actually apply, here are the truths I learned the long way. First, don't delay basic self-care waiting for motivation. Motivation fades, systems stay. Second, protect your decision-making ability like it's sacred. Even small decisions matter. Third, stay slightly uncomfortable on purpose. Comfort is a wonderful servant and a terrible master. Fourth, treat regret as data, not punishment. It's information trying to help you adjust early. And finally, don't outsource your life too soon. Young people often think old wisdom is pessimistic. It's not. It's preventive. We talk about mistakes because we know how quietly they grow. No one wakes up one day and loses everything. They just stop choosing bit by bit. If you're watching this in your 20s or 30s, here's my advice without romance. Your future self is fragile in ways you can't imagine yet. Be gentle with them now. If you're watching this in your 40s, 50s, or beyond, you haven't missed the window. You're just being invited to take responsibility again. I'm 100 years old. I wake up in my own space. I decide my own day. That didn't happen because I beat aging. It happened because I respected it early and negotiated with it honestly. If this story gave you something to reflect on, don't rush past that feeling. Sit with it. Apply one small thing. And if you want more conversations like this, where young questions meet old wisdom, subscribe, stay curious, and keep choosing for yourself while you still can. Thank you for listening.